Awesome. Thanks, Joe. And just a reminder, everybody, go ahead and leave your questions that you have in the Q&A box, and we'll take some time to answer those. Joe, the first question we have from Amanda is, can Aspire be set up to capture emails set externally and tracked through Aspire, thus allowing multiple people to assist on the task?
So you can definitely do that with the Marketing Pro software. You can send emails from the Aspire system. If you're receiving them in, that may at certain times, depending on how the email is sent, you may have to do a little bit of copy and pasting to keep that email response, or if people have expanded it, to keep it all in one record set. Generally, what we see is the email back and forth can be logged, and then tasks be established to do that. But Aspire integrates with email, but it's not naturally like an email workflow system. So you have to do a little bit of copying and pasting. But from our experience, outside of the email campaigns, which are there with Marketing Pro, that's not really a major source of work to keep track of that.
Okay. And a similar question, can you assign a user in Aspire to a new contact and with a deadline?
So you can create a task, and you can set a deadline with that task and assign that task, and that task can be associated. And so that's how you would do that. And then you could use dials and lists to track and make sure people are keeping up with them.
Okay. And a question from Derek, Joe, how does the lead navigate through the custom status you set up? Is it a manual process? For example, like, are you able to see what happened 20 tasks ago, for instance?
So that's where the diligence around logging what you've done becomes really important. And so if you log 20 tasks and completed 20 tasks, that information is going to be retained. And so then you can run analytics, pivots, etc., to understand what that task flow is. What doesn't work, and this doesn't really work in any system, if you take an existing task and just overwrite it, then you're not creating that record to go back and do analytics. So as long as you create close out and then create a new task for each of the activity sets you're trying to track, yes, you can get that history.
Okay. One quick caveat before we move on. Any advice for, handling all of these manual actions? For some, it can maybe be a bit clunky.
Yeah, I mean, the core actions really are just transcribing what you did. So 5 years ago, 10 years ago, all of this would be on an index card or on a notepad, and you would be transcribing, what you did, who you talked to, or you didn't, and it was just in your memory, and you're probably really ineffective at sales. But effective salespeople take excellent notes. They set follow-ups, they record what they're doing, and all the system is doing is giving you a structured way to do it. So there's not more manual work. There's only more manual work if you are recording everything in some other place and then doing it again in Aspire. If you just live in the system, you're only doing things one time, and then you're creating a record of those things so that you can go back and remember, okay, we have another opportunity to bid on this RFP that was last presented 3 years ago. Who was there? Who did I talk to? Who are the board members that I have contacts? And you can have all that rich data set to prepare your strategy if you log everything in Aspire. And the other powerful thing by forcing people to do this is that when inevitably, because we all know business development turnover rates are very, very high. So most likely the person that bid on that project is no longer with your company. Or if they are, they're in a different role. And so having it in a structured way lets the new person pick up and learn from what the past activities were, and try to take a different approach or see if there's different players.
Interesting. And Joe, what recommendations do you have for situations where, like, the contact list, the properties, the opportunities, all of that are out of control? What advice would you give for maybe a company with years of not having a process and only bad data to go off?
Yeah, so that's tough. You probably can utilize the data sets on a go forward basis that have the custom fields. And so if you have the absence of a custom field, you could exclude that data set to not have kind of the junk in there. You know, deleting and cleaning up old information is arduous and difficult. So creating some sort of marker that only started as of, say, 10/21/25 would be the most effective way to not have to go through the, if you just want to delete everything, that's super easy. But if you want to keep records that are important, it's a very hard exercise because you need to have some level of expertise and some level of familiarity with the data set in order to not accidentally delete information you didn't mean to. So the approach I would take on that is to either utilize custom fields we talked about or create a new one. And then that gives you a go forward point. And then you can sort of ignore the data that was present previous to that point and or scrub what you want and add that characteristic. And then you can kind of ignore some of the junk that was there previously.
Good advice. And it looks like we have one last question here from Amanda. Does Aspire work comfortably with HubSpot, or is Marketing Pro the only option?
It works. You either have to manually transcribe data back and forth, or you're going to have to write an API and develop consistent fields. So you certainly can use HubSpot, and HubSpot is a very powerful tool, but you're going to lose some of the data sets and have to have probably yet another third-party layer on top of it to connect things, especially if you're trying to do analytics.
Yeah, great point. Well, Joe, thank you so much for your time today, and thank you to everybody who attended. Please be on the lookout over the next couple of days for a recording of this webinar.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one.